So hello everyone, I'm Shanna. I'm a Canadian medical student, and on this channel we are making different videos to share pre-med advice, showcase different medical journeys, and hopefully give some inspiration and encouragement and positivity. And today we have Wendy. I am so thankful for her to take the time out to chat with us and share her journey. She first did pharmacy school, and now she got accepted to medical school. So congrats to Wendy. And when is a good time to do the MCAT during pharmacy school?
So the important thing about doing the MCAT is you need time to study for it. And unfortunately in pharmacy, every single summer you have practicum. You're doing full-time rotations, right? Monday to Friday for 8 hours a day. So that's why I decided to do my MCAT in first year, and then study all through the summer, and then did the exam in August. And that was in summer of 2018. And I think the important thing is summer I was working, I was doing full-time SSRP, I was balancing practicums, I was planning first year orientations and studying on the MCAT on top of that. So that took away a lot of my concentration, and that wasn't great. So, if you're going to do it in pharmacy, just dedicate a summer to study. It stands for Summer Student Research Program. And in UBC, it's a special program where as an undergraduate, you can apply to do research under a professor or a postdoc or a PI. You can find them by yourself, or there's people that post up their research projects that you can apply to. And if you get the chance, then you will be awarded a certain amount of money, like grant, to do the research for a couple of months with the postdoc or the PI. But that requires a couple months of commitment. And first year practicum in pharmacy is 1 month. So then I think I did mine in May, and then I spent June and July in SSRP. And I think it was minimum of 2 months commitment. So that was basically what I did. So I was doing full-time for 3 months on top of working and everything else. I had more time to study in practicum than during SSRP because during practicum, first year was actually pretty chill. Most preceptors are very understanding of the fact that you learn a very limited amount of things in school. So you do most of your learning on the job. And then when I come home, I would just be able to study. But then in SSRP, there's a lot of things you have to prepare for, because I worked in a wet lab. So there were things I need to prepare for the next day. And as well as the last couple of months of summer is usually when I have to do more things for the planning of the orientation. So during the last couple of months summer, I would say I only got maybe 1 or 2 hours of studying a night at most, because I need sleep. I am not a person that can be a night owl and stay up the whole night to study.
So I guess it sounded like you studied 3 months, 4 months?
3 months, yeah.
And you're still here.
Yeah, it's manageable. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't suggest you do it.
I find that really hard to answer when people say how long should I study? That, and it's hard, and I wish there was an easy answer, because I wanted an easy answer when I was choosing how long to study. But I think I was similar to you. I think I was doing research at the same time, and I was this is not ideal, but you make it work. You just kind of juggle it, and you're I only have to do this once, hopefully.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully you have to do it once.
I think that's why I feel mixed on too, because I think part of me was, one time I was answering someone, I was oh, actually I would go back and, for example, some of my friends just went 100% MCAT. Sometimes I feel tempted to recommend that, but I do think doing research is such a fun, interesting activity, and I'm sure doing orientation and those are things that are actually very fun and enriching, and you're doing them because you love them. And I find it hard to blanket statement to say someone to go 100%, because I do think if I did 0% research, I might have felt less.
Honestly, I'm the same. I'm not a person that can focus 100% of my energy into one thing. I like to have a variety in my life, and yeah, you're right. I don't think I would have been able to just quit everything and then focus on studying. I think I would have definitely had something to do on the side. I wouldn't have done as much things, but you're right. Research was so important to me. And I learned so much, and I got to know so many great people through that opportunity. I wouldn't give it up for the world. So you're right, it's very individualized. You have to know what you need to be able to study well. I think for me, pressure was kind of needed to study, especially in the summer. So because I had so many things to do during the day, I knew I had to study at night. So it got me a lot more focused on my studying that way.
I guess that's like what they talk about, like Parkinson's law. Like once you fill it up, you got no choice, and you're actually less of a procrastinator. Thumbs up. Like, can you tell us about the research you did? Like,
Yeah,
research nerd. Hearing like what kind of exciting findings people are up to.
Oh, of course. So that was the SSRP was based on like it was in a lab that I volunteered there before. So I actually started volunteering there in second year of microbi, and then I got into pharmacy. And then the first year summer, I did the SSRP with the postdoc that I volunteered for. So the lab was called Rossi Lab by the PI, because his last name was Rossi, and is in the Biomedical Research Center at UBC. And they focused on stem cell research. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever, because I don't know why I love working with mice so much. Like, it was my first experience in the wet lab, and I just found it so cool that they got to experiment with mice. I know that sounds kind of morbid, but I really enjoyed learning about, the process that goes into, because it's actually such a rigorous process. The researchers have to plan from getting like the specific breeding and the generation of mice that they want, to be able to, in the end, harvest the muscle, and then to get the sample and do whatever data collection they need on it. It's a really long process, a very interesting thing to observe. And I think I didn't really have a project until the SSRP, but I was just mainly helping my postdoc, because she was doing more things on like eosinophils and fibroadipogenic stem cells, which short for FAP cells. They basically have different roles to play in cellular regeneration. So for example, if somebody has a heart attack, these FAP cells, they can differentiate into either like fiber or fat. And if it differentiates into fiber, then it's really bad for the muscle, because it's no longer as strong. There's less like ability for it to work. And so that's, after a heart attack, your heart always becomes weaker, because there's fiber that fills up that tissue. So they're like researching in ways on how to prevent that from happening. And just looking into cellular regeneration as a topic, I think was very interesting for me. And my subtopic, or like my project, was kind of a subtopic of my postdocs, where she asked me to like basically characterize the different cell types, and like how many cell types there were inside a damaged muscle. So like looking at the percentage of eosinophils compared to other cells, and their role in regeneration. Yeah.
That actually sounds pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was super cool, and I loved working and being trained under her, because she did train me a lot. She was a very, very patient woman, because I was a very forgetful volunteer. I would always forget where things were and how to do things, but she was so kind. And I think that's why I think I had such a good time in the lab. Like, everyone there was amazing.
Aw, so yeah. And I think that's really important. I think like, was this your first research experience?
Yes, that was my first research experience.
I think that's like totally understandable. Even someone as smart as Wendy, everyone's first time kind of sucks.
It does. I look back on it and I'm like, I feel so bad. I wish I was better at things. Yeah.
So I think that's probably how everyone feels about their first time. Like, I look back and I'm like, why was that so hard to understand? Like, there's like that meme where it's like, like someone tells you something 7 times and you're still like, I think that's the thing about research.
Everyone has that. Like, I don't know why. We're all just such noobs in the beginning.
It's like it researches its own language almost. Yeah. Like, and its own, like, for example, and also each lab and each particular field is so different, right? Like, because I haven't done wet lab and I wasn't trained in microbi. If you threw me into your lab, I'd be like, what do I do with these mice? Help. And so, like, for example, I don't know what you have now, but like, say if I threw you into some of the stuff I'm doing right now, and it's maybe like uber specialized, you'd be like, help. Experience. I think because research is so niche, so I would definitely think if anyone was like in your shoes, where you were just like just finished your first year pharmacy, and then I think it's hard to like reconcile the fact that you already have like a year of pharmacy under your belt, 2 years of like microbi, like you feel like you should know a lot of things.
Oh, you really don't. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's totally okay. It's okay that you don't. I don't think anyone expects you to, because like the person training you is a postdoc. So like, you know, they've done all this years and they like did their whole PhD in it. So like they had the time to do it. That said, be like Wendy and be grateful when people take the time to mentor you. I think that just makes all the difference. And something I try to like emphasize a lot is I think getting a good research experience is not about the prestige of the lab. To be fair, I think there is prestigious labs. I just don't know them, maybe because I never cared. But I think I don't know how you would know if someone's a good mentor, but if there was a way that, for example, you know, Wendy, you were friends with Wendy and she had this experience, or, you know, you knew someone who had worked at that lab and just said the mentor was really great, really patient, very hands-on and helping you, I think that would be more meaningful than to like pick something that just like sounded good. But I think also I would take away from yours is like, I think like there's a difference, like for example, like you want to choose something that like a research project sounds glamorous, but I think there's also huge benefit like for like what you did was that you found this topic just so actually fascinating. And when you're talking about it, you're so passionate about it, that like I think that shows, and that probably motivated you to work. And I'm sure it will show if you were if I were initially speaking. I have no affiliation to niche because I don't actually know how they feel, but I would think theoretically if I were on a committee, I would feel that. I would feel it if someone like Wendy had actually really loved what she did and she felt like she had a good experience. I can feel the passion as opposed to someone who got stuck in something they kind of hated. So I think that's something to consider. Like you gotta like it, but you also have a chance to learn, and you also gotta put in that work and get over that hump of feeling really awkward and dumb.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah, I think like everything you said is absolutely, like I can relate to it 100%, and I agree. If I had to pick between getting like a very prestigious lab and getting a great mentor at another lab that was less prestigious, I would definitely pick the better mentor because they just make your whole time, like your whole experience so much more worthwhile. And like in a prestigious lab, you might not be able to do as many things as you do in another lab. I was able to do a lot of things that, you know, my friends in other wet labs weren't allowed to do. Like I did the whole entire process from harvesting the muscle to freezing it, and then cutting it on the cryostat, and then staining and microscopy. Like I don't think every person in the wet lab has the same experience I did. I was lucky to do it because I had a great PI. So yeah, definitely like great PIs make all the difference.
Nice. Did you end up doing any further research after that, or?
No, I actually left and I told my postdoc about it way beforehand when I finished my SSRP, because I said when I like got into pharmacy, I knew I probably wouldn't be able to stay in the wet lab for very long just because of the intensiveness of the program. And also I realized that, you know, my future profession isn't going to be as closely related to wet labs anymore as it was back when I was in microbiome.
Yeah.
So I told her what my goals were, and she completely understood. You know, she was actually one of my references from ed. So we still keep in contact today, and it's great that, you know, I had this experience, we got to know each other.
Mm-hmm. From your research experience, did you get any publications or presentations, and like, I guess like how you like wrote up your research on your application, if you felt like it made a big impact or not, and how you feel about the role of like the importance of doing research, I guess, as a pre-med?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I applied twice for medicine. The first time I didn't have a lot of research experience other than the one that I just mentioned about. And for my time at the wet lab, I didn't have any publications. For the SSRP, we are required to write something up, but that's usually just like a report of what you did for this summer. That's not a publication in a journal. I didn't do a formal presentation anywhere with it either. But as for the second time I applied, that was after I'd already finished my directed studies. And by then this was in pharmacy with another PI. I did do 2 presentations. Well, like formal presentations. I did one oral and one poster presentation at 2 different conferences. And I was working on getting the paper published, but it wasn't published when I applied. So all I had was 2 presentations. That's it. Yeah. And I think it was important because it shows, I think, that at least you have an interest in clinical research, and that you have the ability to present and to talk in front of a professional audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that was one of the big things that changed from my first application to my second application. So I would say I think it's important, but I don't think you need to actually 5 publications. That sounds a little bit crazy. Unless you've been working extensively in research before you have applied. I think it's hard for any undergrad to have like more than 1 or 2 publications before applying. So
I think you and I would agree. I think there's controversial opinions, and my bias is obviously I like research.
Yes.
I personally advocate people trying it. I know some of my amazing and super talented classmates were just like, I hated research, would have never done it in undergrad. I personally felt like it became a passion, so I would have missed out on it if I never tried it. So I definitely hope people will try it. Try it. And I think, I don't want to get flack for saying this, but I personally like clinical research a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't mean that research is better. It's just that as a more clinically oriented people, we find clinically oriented research more interesting. So I might say, like, if someone did basic science research and they didn't find it interesting, they didn't find it engaging, you might want to give it another try again in a more clinically oriented way. And you still might hate it, maybe, but I have a feeling you might like it more because ultimately, if you're not someone who loves the basic science research so much that you think you would rather do a PhD over doing like an MD, it probably makes sense that maybe you are more drawn to clinically relevant or healthcare related stuff. Can I ask what you did for your directed studies?
My directed studies that I did in my second year of pharmacy at BGH, and that was with the antimicrobial stewardship program. And I was recruited basically to do chart review. It was a retrospective study, and they looked at the use of cefazolin. Cefazolin is a cephalosporin antibiotic, and it's a first generation. There's some controversy with using it in the penicillin allergic population, especially if they're anaphylactically allergic. So my research particularly had to do with using cefazolin with penicillin anaphylactic patients and looking at what their reaction was and whether or not there was a reaction at all. So the chart review went great. I learned a lot of things from it. Like, if you haven't done chart review before, it sounds boring, but actually it's very cool reading people's charts. You get to learn a lot of cool stories. And so, like, through that, my PIs were actually very supportive. My entire my project was part of a bigger project they were already working on, because VGH had already changed the pre-printed orders to suggest cefazolin, basically, to the penicillin anaphylactic population. My work is just sort of a quality assurance for it. Yeah, and with that data, I was able to draft out a manuscript and then make a poster. I submitted that to a Canadian conference called AMI, and I presented that as an oral presentation, actually. And then I did, thank you. And then I did an oral presentation at Washington, DC last year as well, for ID Week. Yeah. So, like, I wouldn't have been able to have this experience if I didn't do clinical research. And then also I was very lucky to have such amazing PIs and who were very supportive of my learning and to give me these opportunities. So I would say for people who are hesitant on trying out research, there's no downside. You will always learn something. So just go for it.
Yes, extracurriculars. We mentioned a bit about your research. You did mention kind of bits and pieces, but I guess this is where we tie it together. This is where I just was curious if you wanted. Some of my experiences. So volunteering, I never did anything that was like typical, I guess, of a pre-med where I went to the hospital and I looked after patients and et cetera. Like, I never did any of that. Actually, once I got into pharmacy, I stopped volunteering altogether. I only did, so in undergrad, I did do more. So I was chairing like a national nonprofit organization, or I was like BC chair. And it was for empowering high school students to pursue STEM fields. It's called Science Expo. But then unfortunately, because I knew I was going into an intensive program, I stepped down from that position and I moved on to pursue other things extracurricular wise. I would say, like,
in pharmacy, I really enjoyed my time in the Pharmacy Undergraduate Society. So in second year, I was the secretary, and that was where I talked about planning first year orientation for incoming pharmacy students. This orientation is called GPA, which stands for Great Pharmacy Adventure. And it's a really, really fun event that all incoming students look forward to when they come into pharmacy, because, you know, for a lot of people, it's their first time going to a professional school, and we have a brilliantly amazing building because it's very new. And we hold a lot of like different stations in there, and it's sort of styled after the Amazing Race. And it takes a whole summer to plan. So I was chairing that as the secretary. And then in my third year of pharmacy, I became the vice president external for FUS, Pharmacy Undergraduate Society. And in there, I was like working very closely with AMS at UBC, which is the alma mater society. We discussed basically everything that's going on in the school. And I was also part of the health and dental committee, where we discuss and advocate for different health coverages for students. Other than that, I was also part of UBC Pharmacy Awareness Month. That's in March. And I was chairing that in my third year. So that's kind of an advocacy role for the pharmacy profession. As you could tell, I was very passionate about my role in pharmacy school. So like with my execs, we were able to like create like a month-long calendar of different kinds of events. It was eventually cut short by COVID, which was very unfortunate, but I really appreciated all the work that my team put in. And I think it would have been amazing once we got everything together. Otherwise, I was also part of like a small team that worked on a project for the British Columbia Pharmacy Association conference last year. And it was basically creating like an innovative service that pharmacists can implement for their patients. And we did something along depression and anxiety. So we used questionnaires such as PHQ 9 or the GAD-7. And we thought, oh, it might be possible for pharmacists to use those questionnaires to monitor their patients' mental stability. And so that was something that we did, and we got an award for that. And that was cool. Otherwise, research, I told you guys mostly everything. I think there was one other thing. I did a short work learn term last year summer as like they called it I don't remember exactly what the role was called, but I was working for the Canadian Pharmacogenomics Network for Drug Safety, CPNDS, in BC Children's Hospital. And it was very cool because it was my first experience in pharmacogenomics. And this was like a chance to learn about how researchers put together data from like adverse events of the patient and their genetics and be able to find a correlation together. And my like I was basically helping with a project that looked at like oncology drugs, a specific oncology drug and some specific adverse events. And then I was doing another chart review for them. That was a very interesting experience as well.
Yeah. That sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I was to summarize. So we covered, like, we talked about volunteering, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. So volunteering, I think I like the fact that, for example, you mentioned that you actually didn't do any of the traditional stuff that people treat as though it's essential. I also did volunteer at a hospital. Y'all don't need to do it. It's a cool idea. I think it sounds really fun. I think if you've never had any opportunity to be in a healthcare environment, like totally would be a cool place to dip your feet in. But, you know, from Wendy's story, like you definitely don't have to have it. And I think that's like, I think what you say, like, this is like, I would say if I would summarize Wendy's like flavor of extracurriculars is it seems like you were very passionate. You did a lot of leadership, a lot of advocacy, and a lot of those are tied together. Like you were in leadership positions to do advocacy work in a lot of committees, student council work, so a lot of collaborative leadership and student government type of activities. So I think that's it. Does that sound right? Kind of your
I would say so.
The go-to stuff that seems to get you really excited. And I think that is, again, like the point of, you know, why I bother to ask people about their extracurriculars, not for people to copy, but just to see, like, you know, Wendy has this flavor, and you know, Wendy's flavor is not the same as someone who did like a bajillion like service. Actually, I could probably compare mine, and yours is probably mine. As I actually did, I would say I did very little student government. I did a lot more. I didn't do like, you know, classic volunteering, but a lot more service and advocacy. So a different like blend. And I think they work just equally well. And it's all about like, because I think, like, say Wendy and I are end up in the same hospital, ward or something, we're in the same, or I don't know, right? But we're gonna take on a different role in the healthcare team, and say like, Wendy is gonna take on more of the leadership, and theoretically upstate the ward, and like mine will maybe, like I think every doctor is a different flavor themselves. Every specialty is different too. So I think no one's extracurricular blend has to be exactly what it is. But I think the other takeaway that Wendy, again, just as you were talking about all your research and stuff, is like, again, you were doing things that you were getting excited talking about it and stuff. I think that's the goal, is you wanted to be able to, like, once you've done the extracurricular, you want to be able to look back and say like, wow, that was, like, I still would have done that just for the sake of doing that, in a way. Like,
That's true.
There's always great to, I think there's like zero things wrong, but I'm going to try something out because I also need to fill out my resume for med school. Like, you got to do what you got to do. I think it's just nice to be able to do that as well as have a good time.
Extracurriculars, I didn't think too much about what to put on the resume, but you're right. Like, I would be lying if I didn't think it would look nice on a resume. But I think most important is that, you're right. Like, I wouldn't ever, like, if I read this again, I would still do the same thing, just because of the entire community that I built, and I found throughout these experiences. Like, being in FUS gave me a whole family of people to connect to, and it was just, very, it made the whole professional program stress much easier to tolerate. Yeah.
We talk about research, volunteering. Did we talk about work or any other things?
Work-wise, I worked as a loyal pharmacy assistant for like basically all of my pharmacy years. I was working at London Drugs before for 2 years, and then I switched to Save-Ons last year. So I've been working at Save-Ons for a year and a little bit, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's the cool bonus, I guess, of you being in pharmacy school, is that you're also able to work in a healthcare environment. I would say with like a microbiome degree, I think that would be probably possible. You could, I'm sure I've heard of people still volunteer as like a pharmacy assistant, but I think you're a little bit more qualified, or maybe a lot more qualified, I don't know, to be one. And it kind of connects with your learning a little bit more if you're in a healthcare program. So I think that's another pro, I think, if I was considering doing pharmacy. Again, not the end of the world if you don't have it, but
definitely a plus, because like I think you just, like, as part of the like the healthcare continuity from the patient getting the prescription to you being able to give them their drugs, like I think you just get to be a part of that journey for the patient. And for me, as a pharmacy student, compared to just another assistant without a pharmacy background, like, you're able to understand the prescriptions a lot better, give the patient actual counseling. The pharmacists trust you a lot more, like maybe with typing up the prescriptions, and so you even get to talk to doctors a lot. And I would say that having this experience is a definite plus if you wanted to be in a healthcare profession. For balancing extracurriculars, like, think about how much time that you generally need to study. Each person is different. I would say when I was going through first year, I didn't really skip class. So I went to all the lectures and labs. I worked 1 day a week, and then I really needed that last day to study. And that 1 day off was like my 1 day where I could decide what I want to do. So
I think that's a really good principle. A day that's dedicated to your study catch up, and then also hopefully an evening or an afternoon, depending on when you like to hang out with your friends, like a day for whatever is self-care for you, whether or not that's socializing or potatoing, as we were talking about. Whatever is your sanity, like playing games, watching shows and stuff. That is something I wish I had adopted. I'm gonna be honest, I have trouble doing that at times because I've got to keep up with my review, gotta do whatever. I tend to push off that like rest day. Stress builds up very like insidiously, and then when it gets to that point, we just like have like meltdowns and all that not fun stuff. We give this example since people actually have context for it. But I think, as you said, like everything I do, I feel like I always have to like make it excellent or like beyond excellent, which is like, not necessarily to show off, but just because like if I've committed to it, I'm putting my name on it. You never want to Chinese right now. My mom would say like half a tub of water effort, only go like full tub. And I think that's bad, because then I for example, there was a bit where I was like, I wanted to be super ambitious, and I was like, oh, I should make all this series and try to, you know, produce things twice a week or whatever. And I just got very like wanting to make it very, very good, which is fine. I think it's amazing that we have this drive to always strive for excellence and improve, because it makes things more fun when you want to make it like take it to the next level, and like, you know, instead of just like, oh, it's like that thing. But I realized that one of my friends gave me this advice, was that there's a difference between doing a poor job, like just because you were too lazy to put in like the effort, and then there's a difference between consciously choosing not to make everything into like a pursuit of like an Oscar type of like effort. That it's okay to that ultimately, for example, this is meant to be a hobby, a way to give back with the free time. It's not meant to create another stress. And just like, yeah, like to remind myself that's a choice, that it's okay to sometimes choose to be mediocre. I don't want to say choose to be mediocre, but choose to not be like, you know, 110%. Choose to be 75, but I struggle with it all the time. Every so often we manage to like shave it back down to baseline. It prevents us from ever having like a major stress like burnout.
I'm a very goal-oriented person. Like if I want to do something, I really won't stop until I do it. And I'm usually like not satisfied with status quo. So I would continuously try to pick up more things to do, and I'd feel almost guilty to spend time on myself. Eventually you learn that it's tiring, and it's like the things that you used to feel you have passion for, you feel like you've lost that passion if you just continuously push yourself to do more. Sometimes it's not wrong to just take that day off for yourself. You don't have to always strive to do a lot.
People should leave questions for Wendy below, but I think Wendy answered a lot of them. And I
hope what I talked about today is relatable to some people, can help some people. And yeah, thank you for having me here and to give me the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Wendy.